Welcome back, deep divers. Today we're going to explore something pretty incredible, the world of psychology.
Yeah, and we're going way beyond just, those typical couches and dream analysis.
Exactly. We're diving into how psychology really impacts, well, like every single part of our lives.
And you know what's really cool? Understanding even like the basics of psychology can help you in so many ways.
Totally. Like with your career, relationships, heck, even just understanding yourself better.
Absolutely.
We'll be pulling some fascinating insights from this overview we have on psychology, so buckle up.
Get ready for some aha moments.
What blows my mind is how many people don't even realize psychology is a real science.
Oh, for sure. It's not just intuition or opinions or anything.
Like, it uses legit scientific methods, just like chemistry or biology.
Which also means, the findings of psychology can be applied to real world problems.
Exactly. So it's not just theoretical stuff, it's got real practical value.
Totally.
So let's start with the basics, like what exactly is psychology? How's it defined?
Well, psychology basically defines itself as the scientific study of the mind and behavior.
So it's not just what people think or feel, but also why they think and feel that way, right?
Exactly. It's that why that makes things so interesting, digging into the motivations and all that.
For sure. So to understand where we are today, it helps to like go way back.
Back to the beginning.
Yeah. Did you know that even like ancient Greek philosophers were already trying to understand the mind?
Oh, yeah. Thinkers like Plato and Aristotle, they were wrestling with some pretty deep questions about the soul.
So this fascination with the mind has been around for centuries.
Centuries, absolutely.
But of course, it wasn't until much later that psychology became like an actual official scientific field.
Right, like in the late 1800s.
Yeah, when Wilhelm Wundt opened the first psychology lab in Germany.
That was a game changer.
I know, can you imagine? Back then, they relied a lot on a method called introspection.
Introspection.
Yeah, where people basically had to like describe their own thoughts and feelings in detail.
Whoa, that's got to be tough. Like trying to be objective about your own mind.
Right. It's like trying to bite your own teeth.
Haha, I like that.
But it's wild to think those early pioneers were grappling with these big questions.
Yeah, it's amazing how far we've come since then.
Totally. And speaking of grappling, psychology has had its fair share of debates in different schools of thought.
Oh, absolutely. Like any field, it's evolved with all sorts of different perspectives.
Like two of the earliest approaches were structuralism and functionalism.
Right, and those are pretty different ways of looking at things.
It's almost like trying to understand, say, a car.
A car.
Yeah, like structuralists, they'd be all about taking the car apart, seeing how all the individual pieces work together.
Okay, I see. So they're focused on the structure, the building blocks.
Exactly. While functionalists, they'd be more interested in, like, what the car does.
Ah, so like how it moves, transports people, gets us from point A to point B.
Right? They'd be studying its purpose and function within a system.
That's a really great analogy. It helps to see how those two perspectives were coming from different angles.
And of course, there were other big players too, like behaviorism.
Oh, behaviorism. That one definitely shook things up.
Yeah, it was a pretty radical departure from introspection.
For sure. Psychologists like John B. Watson and B.F. Skinner, they argued that the focus should be only on what you can observe, like behavior.
So forget trying to understand, like, internal thoughts and
Right,
feelings.
just look at what people do.
So instead of asking someone, how do you feel about a spider?
Hmm.
A behaviorist would just, like, watch how they react when they see one.
Exactly. They believed that our environment and, the consequences of our actions are what really shape our behavior.
So, like, they were all about rewards and punishments, seeing how those external factors could change behavior,
Yeah, it's fascinating how all those schools of thought, you know, build on each other.
even when they disagree sometimes.
Totally.
And then you've got, of course, psychoanalysis with Sigmund Freud.
Oh, Freud, definitely one of the most famous or infamous figures in psychology.
I know, right?
Eh.
Even if some of his theories, well, they've been challenged over time.
But he was definitely groundbreaking, bringing the unconscious mind and all that into the spotlight.
Totally. And then, as a kind of counterpoint to all that intensity, you have the rise of humanistic psychology.
Ah, humanistic psychology. It's a much more positive and, optimistic view of human nature.
Exactly.
Huh.
Thinkers like Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow, they were all about focusing on things like creativity and self-actualization.
That innate drive to reach our full potential.
So instead of focusing on what's wrong with people, it was more about helping them become their best selves.
Yeah, it was about creating a supportive environment where people could thrive.
It's incredible how psychology has evolved from those early days in Wundt's lab.
To this huge range of approaches, it's amazing.
And that brings us to today, where psychology has branched out into all these specialized fields.
Each one focusing on a different piece of the puzzle, so to speak.
Exactly. And that's what we'll explore next, the fascinating world of psychology's many branches.
I can't wait to dive into that.
Me too.
So, are you ready to really zoom in on this command center, this incredible brain?
I am fascinated by the brain. Like every thought, feeling, action, it all starts there.
Yeah, it really is the most complex thing we know of, way more than any computer.
But how does it actually work, though? Like,
Yeah.
how do those electrical impulses and all those chemicals actually translate
Ugh.
into, like, me decided to grab another cup of coffee?
Well, the brain is made up of billions of neurons.
Neurons.
Yeah, these specialized cells that communicate with each other through these electrical and chemical signals.
Yeah.
And those signals, they travel along super intricate pathways, creating these networks that process information and basically control our behavior.
So it's like a constant flow of information in our heads.
Yeah, like a super highway of activity constantly zipping around.
But it's not just one big blob of activity, right? Like
Yeah.
different parts of the brain, they have different jobs.
Exactly. Think of it like a city with specialized districts.
I like that analogy, okay?
So you have your frontal lobe right behind your forehead, and that's responsible for all the planning and decision making, that really important self-control.
Okay, so that's what's working overtime when I'm, trying to resist those cookies in the pantry.
You got it. And then there's the temporal lobe, which is really key for language and memory and hearing.
So that's why I can still remember, like, song lyrics from when I was a kid, even if I haven't heard them in forever.
Exactly. It's all stored in that temporal lobe.
What about, like, those deeper, more primal feelings? Where do things like, fear or excitement, where do those come from?
Ah, that's where the limbic system comes in. It's like a cluster of structures deep within the brain, and it's responsible for emotions, motivation, memory formation, all those really powerful things.
Okay, so it's like the emotional core of the brain.
Yeah, you got it. Think about fight or flight responses, feelings of reward and pleasure. It all comes from the limbic system.
Wow, so that's where those gut feelings originate.
Exactly.
It's incredible how all these different parts of the brain, like, work together.
It's like a symphony, isn't it?
It is. And thanks to, all the advances in technology, we can actually see some of this orchestration in action.
Wait, really? We can see the brain working?
Yeah, apparently so. I mean, that's what I've read.
Oh, for sure. Neuroimaging techniques like MRI scans and EEGs, they've totally revolutionized how we understand the brain.
Okay, so tell me more about that. Like, how do those work?
Well, MRIs, they give you these really detailed images of the brain's structure, like a high-res map.
Okay.
And then EEGs, they measure the electrical activity in the brain so you can actually see which areas are firing in real time.
So we can literally, like, watch the brain light up when someone's doing a task or feeling something.
Pretty much, it's mind-blowing.
That is mind-blowing.
And these technologies have led to all these breakthroughs in diagnosing and treating brain injuries and disorders.
Right, because we can actually see what's going on.
Exactly. Neuropsychologists, they use these tools to assess the damage after, say, a stroke or a traumatic brain injury, and then they can, develop specific treatment plans.
So neuropsychology is kind of like bridging that gap between the physical brain and how it affects our thoughts and emotions and actions.
Yeah, it's like detective work,
Yeah.
piecing together those clues.
To figure out how those changes in the brain are affecting someone's abilities or personality.
Exactly. They might work with someone who's having memory problems after a concussion, or help someone with Alzheimer's to maintain their cognitive function for as long as possible.
It sounds like incredibly important work.
It is, for sure.
But with all that we've learned about the brain, it also seems like there's still so much we don't know,
No, totally. There's still so many mysteries.
Like, what are some of the big questions that, neuroscientists are still grappling with?
Oh, man, there are so many. One of the biggest ones is, how consciousness arises from all those neurons.
Yeah, how does that physical matter create, our experience of the world, our sense of self?
Right. It's the ultimate question.
And what about the whole nature versus nurture debate? Like, how much of who we are is, like, hardwired from birth and how much is shaped by our experiences?
Yeah, that's another big one, and it's still a hot topic.
It's a classic for a reason, right?
For sure. And, it seems like most things are a mix of both genes and environment, but, teasing apart those influences is super challenging.
Definitely makes you appreciate how complex we are as humans.
Absolutely.
All this talk about the brain makes me think about, mental health, which is something we as a society are only beginning to understand.
Oh, for sure. And it's just as important as physical health, you know?
Absolutely. And thankfully, it seems like the stigma surrounding mental illness is starting to fade a bit.
Yeah, we're realizing it can affect anyone, no matter your age, background, anything.
And I think that awareness is so important
Yeah.
because it helps people feel more comfortable seeking help when they need it.
Exactly. There's no shame in reaching out for support.
And the good news is there are a lot of effective treatments available.
Yeah, like therapy, medication, lifestyle changes, all sorts of things that can make a huge difference.
It's like having a whole toolbox of options.
Exactly. And psychology isn't just about, like, treating problems after they arise, you
All
know?
right. It's also about preventing them
Yeah, it's about building resilience, learning how to cope with stress.
so we don't get overwhelmed in the first place.
Exactly. It's all about empowering people to take charge of their well-being.
This has been such an amazing journey so far.
I know, right? We've gone from the history of psychology to the brain to mental health.
It's incredible how much we've covered.
And we're not done yet.
I know. But before we wrap things up completely, I want to bring it back to our listeners.
Okay, yeah.
Like, what are some of the key takeaways they can use in their own lives?
So many good takeaways. Where should we even start?
Well, something that really stuck with me was the idea of, different schools of thought.
Oh, yeah, like different lenses for looking at the mind.
Exactly. Like, there isn't always one right answer when it
Yeah.
comes to, the complexities of human behavior.
Totally. It's not that simple.
So for our listeners, one of the biggest takeaways is just, being aware that these different perspectives even exist.
Yeah, because it encourages you to be more open-minded.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally.
Mm.
And, maybe even explore those different schools of thought and see which ones resonate most with you.
Yeah, like which ones make the most sense to you?
Right. Which ones kind of help you make sense of your own experiences.
It's almost like finding the right tool for the job.
I like that. The right tool for the job.
It's like you wouldn't use a hammer to, tighten a screw.
Right. And you wouldn't use psychoanalysis to, understand how someone learns a new language.
Aha, exactly.
So once you have a better understanding of, your own psychological style, you can start to apply those insights to your own life.
In a more conscious way, yeah.
Right. Like being more intentional.
For example, if you're really into the ideas of cognitive psychology, you might start paying closer attention to your own thought patterns.
Why am I thinking this way? Is this thought helpful or harmful?
Exactly. Or, if you're fascinated by social psychology, you might become more aware of how, your environment or the people around you are influencing you.
Yeah, that's so true. It's easy to forget how much our surroundings affect us.
Right. Like you might notice how you, kind of conform to group norms or how your behavior changes depending on who you're with.
It's all about becoming more self-aware.
And using that awareness to make better choices.
I love that.
And the coolest thing is psychology is always evolving. There's always something new to learn.
It's a lifelong journey for sure.
Absolutely.
So for our listeners who are, feeling inspired to dive even deeper, what are some good resources
Yeah.
or next steps they could take?
Oh, there are so many. Like start with your local library or bookstore. Tons of great books out there.
And don't forget about podcasts.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So many great shows that cover all sorts of psychology topics.
And what about online courses?
Yeah, those are great too. Lots of universities offer free or low-cost courses.
So you can learn from experts at your own pace.
Exactly. And, sometimes the best learning happens just by, paying attention to your own thoughts and feelings.
Oh, for sure. Observe the people around you.
Yeah.
Ask yourself why they do the things they do.
Yeah, curiosity is key.
Curiosity is the fuel, totally.
The more we pay attention, the more we realize, how amazing and complex humans really are.
And the more we understand ourselves and each other, the better we can navigate the world.
And hopefully create a more fulfilling life, right?
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, I think it's safe to say this deep dive has given us all a lot to think about.
It has been a wild ride.
It really has. Thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of psychology.
It's been my pleasure.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and, most importantly, keep asking those why questions.
You never know what amazing insights you might discover about yourself and the world around you.
Until next time, deep divers.